Have you ever walked away from a conversation and felt the need to replay every word, not because you said something wrong, but because you were afraid they might not have liked you enough? That sickening tug in your chest, the second guessing, the shrinking. You become smaller, softer, more agreeable, just enough to be palatable. You laugh when you're not amused. You nod when you disagree. You become a mirror to other people's comfort zones, a ghost of your own presence. It's not kindness. It's survival, and it's killing you slowly. This isn't about manners. This isn't about empathy. This is about the addiction to being liked. And like any addiction, it doesn't care what it costs you. Your boundaries, your time, your identity. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Machiavelli's words sting not because they're cruel, but because they expose something you've tried to deny. That maybe approval is not a reward. Maybe it's a leash. What if every compliment you chase, every like you gather, every time you say yes when your soul screams no, you're reinforcing the bars of a cage you built yourself? A prison made of politeness, of pleasure, of pretending. You've mistaken validation for love. But real love never asks you to disappear. You don't need to be everyone's favorite character in their story. You need to reclaim authorship of your own, because the disease of approval is subtle. It doesn't destroy you with fire. It erodes you with a smile. And here's the terrifying part. You've been applauding your own erasure. It didn't start with you. It started with the look your parents gave when you said no, the teacher's praise when you sat quietly, the gold star for being easy, nice, respectful. You learned early. Peace was earned through self-erasure. Obedience wasn't just expected, it was rewarded. You weren't taught boundaries, you were taught to be manageable. Do you remember the first time you swallowed your voice just to keep the peace? Not because it felt right, but because the alternative was tension, distance, disapproval. From the dinner table to the classroom, you were trained to serve others' comfort at the cost of your own clarity. They called it good behavior. You now wear it like armor, but this armor has rusted. It doesn't protect you, it imprisons you, and yet how could you have known? The system didn't teach you to trust yourself. It taught you to anticipate others, to smile before you speak, to apologize for having needs. You weren't being kind, you were adapting to survive. This isn't a flaw in your character. It's a scar from your conditioning. Our shadow passed down like inheritance. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." So here you are, carrying a script written by others. A quiet, obedient version of you trained for applause, not authenticity, but scripts can be rewritten. And survival is not the same as living. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you trade a piece of your soul for silence. Not peace, silence. At first, it feels harmless. Just one more favor, one more smile, one more boundary bent in the name of being good. But there's a toll you're paying, and it's not in time, it's in identity. You start to forget what you want. You hesitate when asked what you need, not because you don't feel it, but because you've trained yourself to ignore it. Chronic. Self-doubt becomes your shadow. You second-guess everything, your tone, your worth, your right to say no, and worst of all, you begin to disappear. The irony is brutal. The more you try to be liked, the less seen you become. They don't admire you. They use you. And why wouldn't they? You've made yourself endlessly available, effortlessly pliable. You thought approval meant safety, but now you're exhausted, emotionally bankrupt, spiritually fragmented. It is better to be feared than loved if one cannot be both. Machiavelli didn't mean terror. He meant presence, command, respect. Because being liked is cheap, but being respected, that costs clarity, boundaries, the refusal to shrink. If you are always agreeable, you become invisible. You weren't born to be a background character in someone else's script. You were meant to disrupt, to define, to be felt. But first, you have to stop apologizing for existing. The moment you stop saying yes, they say, "You've changed." The moment you put up a boundary, they whisper, "You're selfish." It's not a coincidence. It's a strategy. Guilt is their favorite weapon because it's silent and it works. You feel it in your stomach. That twisting, nauseating anxiety when someone you care about acts disappointed. Not because you hurt them, but because you didn't bend for them. And here's the truth no one tells you. Most guilt has nothing to do with morality. It has everything to do with control. You were trained to mistake obedience for love, so the moment you resist, you don't feel strong. You feel wrong. But ask yourself, if your no causes distance, was your yes ever respected? This is the hidden enforcement of the approval system, emotional manipulation disguised as virtue. People don't want the real you. They want the version that makes them comfortable. And when you break the pattern, they push back, hard. But here's the shift. Guilt is not proof that you've done something bad. It's proof that you're stepping out of the role they scripted for you. And that right there is your first act of rebellion, as Machiavelli would suggest. It's not cruel to defy expectations. It's a strategy. Its power is reclaiming its name. So next time guilt knocks, don't open the door too quickly. Ask, is this my conscience or my conditioning? You've spent your life trying to be good. But whose definition are you living by? They told you good means soft, agreeable, humble, quiet. Never too much, never too loud, always bending, never breaking. But what if that version of good wasn't goodness at all? What if it was obedience dressed as virtue? You've confused kindness with self-sacrifice. You've mistaken silence for peace. And now you're exhausted from holding a moral shape that wasn't designed to protect you, but to pacify you. Nietzsche called this slave morality, a system designed by the powerless to sanctify weakness. It teaches you that suffering is noble, that shrinking is holy, that being used is proof of your goodness. But who does that serve? Certainly not you. Machiavelli saw it clearly. Those who hold power are not always nice, but they are effective. They don't seek approval. They command respect. And here's the dangerous question. What if your obsession with being good is the very thing making you weak? What if the morality you were given was never meant to empower you, only to tame you? You are not here to be palatable. You are here to be powerful, not cruel, not careless, formidable, because true goodness doesn't require your erasure. It requires your presence, your clarity, your spine. Let the revolt begin, not against others, but against the lie that to be good you must be invisible. You tell yourself you're just being nice. You smile, you agree, you let it slide. But deep down, you're not being kind, you're hiding. Niceness is a mask, and behind it lives fear, fear of rejection, fear of confrontation, fear that if you show who you really are, they'll leave, or worse, they'll stay, but love you less, so you perform, you people please. You shapeshift to keep the peace, even if it means waging war on yourself. But here's the incision point. Niceness is not virtue if it costs your self-respect. It's cowardice, hard truth, but necessary. Because if your kindness is rooted in fear, it's not kind at all. It's a strategy, a survival mechanism, a way to be tolerated instead of truly seen. Machiavelli wouldn't call that noble. He'd call it weak positioning. He'd say, better to be real and risk resentment than fake and win favor. So who are you beneath the performance? The part of you that bites your tongue, that softens your truth, that laughs when you want to scream. Who trained you to believe that part was lovable? You weren't born with this mask, you built it. And you can dismantle it, because the opposite of conflict isn't peace, it's repression, and you cannot become powerful by pretending to be harmless. Why does being feared terrify you so much? Because it means you're no longer safe. Not safe. For others to manipulate. Not predictable, not pliable. It means you have edges, boundaries that don't bend on demand. Power that doesn't apologize for existing, and that makes people nervous. You've been taught that to be feared is to be wrong. That means you're cold, harsh, unloving, but that's a lie crafted to keep you small. Here's the deeper truth. Fear is not always violence. Sometimes fear is just respect without access. The moment people can't read you, can't predict your answer, can't guilt you into softness, they begin to respect you. Not because you dominate them, but because you no longer betray yourself. For their comfort, unpredictability is power. When you're always agreeable, always available, you become forgettable. A background hum, a non-threat. But introduce mystery, a pause before your yes, a sudden refusal to explain yourself, and watch how fast the dynamic changes. This doesn't mean becoming cruel. It means becoming sovereign. Modern culture shames power in empathic people. It tells you that strength corrupts, but Nietzsche warned us, it's not power that corrupts, it's the denial of it. So let them fear your clarity, let them fear your refusal to bend, because sometimes being feared is just the world, realizing you're no longer theirs to control. Machiavelli is often painted as the villain, the master of cruelty and deceit, But that's a misunderstanding. The prince is not a manual for heartlessness. It's a guide to strategy, to sovereignty. He wasn't calling for chaos, he was calling for clarity. The prince understands optics, he understands leverage, he understands that timing can be sharper than any blade. This is emotional sovereignty, not reacting like a leaf in the wind, but moving like a king on a chessboard, not impulsively, but with intention, with confidence, with consequence. You don't need to be cruel to be powerful. You need to be aware of when to hold your silence, when to speak your truth, and when to let the world feel your absence. This is your invitation to shed the victim role, to stop reacting to the emotional battlefield of approval and guilt. Instead, become the strategist of your own inner empire. Calculate your moves, choose your battles, and own your presence. Because power isn't about domination, it's about mastery. And mastery starts with knowing yourself well enough to never give your will away again. What if the real weapon wasn't silence, but controlled silence? What if the invisible blade was your own calm, your own refusal to be manipulated? This is not just survival. This is sovereignty reborn. Imagine a power so quiet, so contained, it's felt before it's seen. This is the art of indifference. Not apathy, not coldness, but a strategic withdrawal of your emotional currency. You stop chasing approval, stop performing for applause, stop over-explaining yourself as if your value depended on it. This is not fakery, it is mastery. Machiavelli taught the prince to conceal his intentions, to never reveal the full hand, because power thrives in mystery and restraint. When you hold your emotional energy like a guarded treasure, you build an invisible fortress around yourself. People notice. They sense the shift. You are no longer auditioning for their acceptance. You have become a presence they must reckon with. This indifference is your armor, a calm container of your will, a refusal to be baited or pulled into others' emotional chaos. It's the difference between reacting like a puppet and moving like a master puppeteer. When you embody this art, you don't need to shout to be heard. Your silence commands the room. You are no longer the background noise in their lives. You are the signal, clear, steady, unshakable. This is the power of psychological sovereignty. Quiet, contained, deliberate. Because sometimes the most dangerous weapon is not an invisible blade, but the stillness that precedes it. Respect is not demanded, it is trained, and the training begins with your actions, quiet but unyielding. You don't have to raise your voice or lash out. You simply become calm and decisive. When someone crosses a boundary, you don't panic or apologize. You respond with silence, with absence, with a refusal to engage on their terms. Every ignored text, every unanswered call, every pause after. Disrespect. These aren't signs of cruelty. They are lessons in your value, because unavailability is not rejection. It is a signal that your time and energy are not commodities to be squandered. People sense this shift. They begin to recalibrate, to test the new rules, to step back or step up. This is the psychology of boundaries. You don't convince them to respect you. You show them what respect looks like through your presence and absence. And as you grow, firmer in your refusal to chase approval, you discover a profound truth. People will adapt. Some will resist, some will leave. But those worth having in your life will learn to meet you where you stand, powerful, clear, and unshakable. Training respect is not about control, it's about sovereignty. You reclaim your power not by fighting for it, but by living it, and the world can't help but notice. Imagine your attention as currency, not endless coins tossed to everyone who asks, but precious gold carefully minted, weighed, and spent. The law of scarcity is simple yet brutal. When you are always available, your value diminishes. Those who give freely without limit become invisible, predictable, taken for granted like an endless resource. But those who withhold, who choose when and how to give their emotional energy, become powerful, because scarcity creates desire. It builds tension. It forces others to lean in, to earn your presence. This is not cruelty. It's economics meeting psychology. You're not begging for attention. You're issuing it with precision. Every yes is a coin spent deliberately, not tossed recklessly. When you become less accessible, you create an emotional scarcity that commands respect. You're no longer the background noise of people's lives. You are the rare melody they crave. And in that space, you reclaim control over your energy, your time, yourself. This paradox is the cornerstone of power. Less of you makes others want more, not because you've withdrawn from care, but because you've chosen to value yourself enough to stop giving away your soul in the name of being liked. What if, instead of chasing approval, you invested your energy in power rituals, small, deliberate acts that build your inner gravity, the kind of presence that pulls the world toward you, without a single word begged or explained? Silence becomes your ally, stillness your fortress, decisive action your signature. These aren't grand gestures, they are micro-choices, withholding your energy when it's wasted, speaking only when it matters, and embracing your shadow instead of hiding it. Machiavelli understood this deeply. The prince knows when to reveal, when to conceal, and when to move unseen like a shadow across the chessboard. Modern psychology calls this emotional containment, the ability to hold your feelings without spilling them, like water through cracked hands. Every time you choose stillness over reaction, every time you replace guilt with calm, you build a fortress of self-command. This is transformation in motion, not loud or flashy, but subtle and relentless. Because power is not about noise, it's about presence. And presence comes from rituals that root you in your own sovereignty, not in others' fleeting approval. Start here. This is your first taste of freedom. Strip away the echoes of their praise, the smiles, the nods, the silent approval you crave. Who remains? This is no simple question. It is the descent into the void, the death of the ego that feeds on reflection. Without their validation, your identity feels fragile, like a house built on sand. But what if that house was never yours to begin with? The voices you chased were not your own. The mask you wore was stitched from their expectations. Now in the silence, in the absence of their approval, you meet yourself, raw, unfiltered, unseen. It is terrifying to look into the abyss of your own soul without the light of external mirrors, but it is also liberating. This is the ego death Carl Jung spoke of, the shedding of false selves, the birth of an authentic being. Can you survive this void? Can you stand alone without the applause that once defined you? The answer is not found in others. It is found in the stillness within, the part of you that existed before approval and will remain long after it fades. In that silence, you discover your true power, not given by them but born inside you, waiting to be claimed. You were once a performer, calculating every move, measuring your worth by the applause, the fleeting smiles, the nods of approval. But now, something shifts. You no longer seek validation outside yourself. You become self-validating. Presence replaces performance. Stillness becomes your stage. This stillness is not emptiness. It is a deep, coherent power, the quiet confidence that doesn't need to prove itself. Charisma flows from this inner alignment, not from forced effort or rehearsed lines. You don't perform for others. You are. Machiavelli whispered this truth. Across centuries, a wise ruler must appear all things to all people, but be loyal only to himself. You learn to wear the masks when necessary, but never at the cost of your core. Your power comes from being whole, a presence unshaken by the world's shifting tides. This is sovereignty, the ability to navigate chaos with calm, to hold your ground without rigidity, to radiate strength through quiet assurance. You have stopped performing for approval because your worth has become a light that shines from within, steady, unwavering, and unbreakable. This is the transformation. From a shadow chasing applause to a soul standing in its own undeniable light. There is a quiet power in being unavailable, not out of cruelty, but out of profound wholeness. You no longer flinch at disapproval. Its weight no longer drags you down. That silence that once felt unbearable, the pause where validation once rushed in, now becomes your sanctuary. In this space, you find peace. Peace, not born from victory over others, but from victory over yourself. The storm of neediness calms. The restless hunger for approval fades. You stand unbothered, not because you are distant, but because you are deeply rooted. This is sovereignty, not domination, but command over your own inner world. The world may rage, demand, and shout for your attention, but you remain a still lake, reflecting only what you choose. Here in this stillness, you taste freedom. Freedom from the chains of approval, from the exhaustion of performance. This peace is your true power, soft yet unbreakable, a quiet strength flowing like water, steady, inevitable, and whole. You are no longer theirs to sway, you are yours to keep. You have walked through the fire, felt the burn of needing to be liked, the chains of approval tightening around your soul, but now you stand at a crossroads. Power does not come from being loved. It comes from being loyal to yourself. No longer a prisoner of their judgment, you are the architect of your own life. This is the transformation, from approval addict to inner sovereign. You are not here to perform for applause. You are here to rule your world with quiet strategy, to move with calculated purpose, to command respect without begging for it. Machiavelli's voice echoes through the ages. Do not wait for permission to rule your life. The time for waiting is over. Rise not as a performer, but as a strategist of your own soul. Craft your boundaries like armor. Wear your silence like a crown. Let your presence be the force that shifts the room. This is your moment. Choose power, not permission, because the only approval you need has always been inside you, and now you finally see it, waiting quietly to be claimed.